Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. This is the first video in a series of 10 which will address all areas of Unit 3. We're going to start off with Topic 1, Personal Financial Sustainability. Within this video, you're going to be learning what personal financial sustainability actually is, as well as the consequences of getting into unmanageable debt. We're also going to look at a number of different methods that people can do to achieve sustainable personal finances over the long term. So, what is personal financial sustainability? It is achieving a balance between your income and your expenditure, both for the short and the medium as well as the long term. This will allow an individual to pay the cost of living, their needs, whilst also being able to put money away to one side towards their wants and their aspirations. For more information about wants and aspirations, please check out my video on Unit 2, Topic 1. I'll leave the link in the description. So, when we're talking about personal financial sustainability, we need to establish why it's such an important concept. And we need to cast our minds back, really, to the 2008 financial crisis. Now, bankers are often the target of finger-pointing when it comes to who started the financial crisis. However, that said, consumers who took advantage of cheap credit to pay for unsustainable spending may also be partly to blame. If you look at this table on the right-hand side, you'll see that the level of personal debt in the UK rose sharply between 1994 and 2008. It dipped ever so slightly after the financial crisis, but then increased again up to the latest data in 2021. The fact that personal debt is growing means that some people are finding it extremely difficult in order to maintain personal financial sustainability. Of course, with the recent interest rate rises as well, the level of personal debt is particularly worrying. So what are some of the consequences of getting into unmanageable debt without being able to pay it back? Well, let's start with the legal action. If your creditors are unable to recover their payment, they have the legal right to take you to court and try and recover it in that way. You may be served with a county court judgment, otherwise known as a CCJ. Bankruptcy could also be a long-term impact. Your home may be repossessed, and there will be increased demand for help and advice from the government and non-government organisations, including Money Helper and Citizens Advice. That said, it's also important to recognise that the government sees this as a real concern and has added financial capability to the national curriculum. So how can individuals achieve this sustainable personal finance over the long term then? Well, firstly, they can be aware of money they are spending and what they are actually spending it on. Is it just their needs, or are they spending it on things that are not really going to generate too much of a return? Use weekly or monthly budgets and cash flow forecasts to help their spending. They can also know the financial implications of future events and aspirations. If they, for example, purchase a new car on finance, then that is going to have long-term implications each month when they need to make those car payments. Individuals should have a savings plan to build up the capital sums that they expect to need in the future. They should also make sure that they are carefully planning any borrowing that they make, and only borrow amounts that they are able to pay back. They should also consider having an adequate emergency fund to fall back on when there's an unexpected reduction in income. Perhaps they might be made redundant, for example. Now, there's different people that say different levels of the emergency fund. Some people say it should be enough to cover 3 months of living expenses. Some go as high as 6. Nevertheless, it's important to have some sort of emergency fund in order to achieve sustainable personal finances. They may also consider paying into a pension scheme to ensure that there's adequate income for them in retirement. Individuals could also look for ways to increase their incomes. This might be seeking promotion and career development, or by working overtime, or taking a second job on. It might also be a side hustle. Individuals can make use of appropriate insurance products to protect their incomes. Things like income protection or insurance which covers you if you are ill for a certain amount of time are good ways to protect one's income and ensure that things like house payment, car payment, etc. are not over the income coming in. Individuals should also regularly monitor, review and amend their financial plan. Of course, things happen, and we're going to look at them in a second, which are outside of our control, and therefore amendments to financial plans are often needed. Individuals should also have clear, realistic contingency plans to deal with these unexpected events that can disrupt their carefully made plans completely. So what does a typical budgeting flowchart showing spending priorities for a financial sustainable individual actually look like? Well, this is the diagram taken from the textbook, and you can see here that the first stage is to pay all mandatory bills. These are bills which have to be paid or potentially might have a legal consequence. Then meet basic needs before paying essential bills. And finally, dividing up any surplus between spending and saving. Let's look at these stages in a bit more depth. So, mandatory expenditure covers those costs that you have a legal obligation to pay. They don't necessarily apply to everyone, but if they do apply, they must be paid, or you could risk legal action, resulting in fines or even a prison term. Such mandatory bills include income tax, national insurance, workplace pension, council tax, third-party car insurance. Of course, there are other types of car insurance available, comprehensive and third-party fire and theft. But if you have a car, third-party car insurance is the minimum requirement. Road tax, MOT certification, as well as a TV license. The next is essential expenditure, which covers those costs that have to be paid to meet basic needs. Failing to pay for some of these items, those for which you have signed a contract that includes a commitment to make regular payments, may also result in legal action through the civil courts. These are things like basic food and drinks needs, rent instalments, mortgage payments, utility bills. Adequate clothing would also fall into meeting basic needs, travel to work or college, a mobile phone contract, and monthly loan payments. And then we come on to the fourth stage. This is when we divide any surplus, which essentially means we've got money left over, between spending and saving. Discretionary expenditure is spending on items that are neither mandatory nor essential, but simply fulfill a want or an aspiration. These might be things like snack foods and drinks, gym subscriptions, a satellite TV or Netflix, takeaway food, fashion clothing, eating out at restaurants, other sorts of entertainment, and holidays. So let's look at this contingency planning in a bit more depth. This is where we consider and try to plan for the impact of unexpected events. So there are some events which might happen which of course are unfavourable. These are things like losing a job or receiving a pay cut, an increase in the rate of income tax, becoming ill and having to stop work for a period of time, or major car repair costs. For these sorts of unfavourable events, a contingency plan would be ideal. As we said earlier, some experts disagree as to how much you should have in your contingency plan. However, that said, you can see that some minor things like car repairs might cost up to £1,000 or £2,000, whereas becoming ill and having to stop work for a period of time might cost you and your family a considerable amount more. On the flip side, however, we have favourable events. These are things such as getting a job, or being given a salary increase or promotion at work. You might win money on the lottery, or an increase in the value of an asset takes place, such as a house or money in your savings account. You may pay off a personal loan. This might not necessarily be an unexpected thing, but of course it's a favourable event nevertheless. If these sorts of things happen to you, then once again your contingency planning might put in place some sort of course of action. For example, if you're given a salary increase, that would increase your surplus amount each month, and therefore you might wish to invest the surplus or put it into a savings account. So when we're looking at financial plans, we must consider flexibility. When designing a financial plan, in fact, the need for flexibility is vital. So why might flexibility need to be factored into an individual's financial plan? For two reasons, really. The first is irregular costs, and the second, unexpected events. Now, as we said previously, irregular costs might be things like your car breaking down and having to fix it, whereas unexpected events may of course be things like having to take a pay cut or being off work for some time due to illness. So what are some of the characteristics of a flexible financial plan? Firstly, it should be balanced between different time periods. It should be informed, and it should also be able to adapt to changing products and services. It should be fluid, whilst also being realistic. Let's look at each of these 5 in a bit more depth. The first one is being balanced between different time periods. This in effect means that the plan should look at income and expenditure in the short, the medium, and the long term. The second characteristic of a flexible financial plan is that it should be informed. It should be fully aware of monthly repayments and any hidden costs. The third characteristic is to be able to adapt to changing products and services. It should be able to consider the impact of changes in interest rates, for example, and what other what-if scenarios. It should also be fluid. It should reflect any monthly, termly, or seasonal variations in the personal circumstances of the person making it. And the fifth characteristic of a flexible financial plan is that it should be realistic. The person drawing up the plan should aim for a balance between being optimistic about the future and being pessimistic about the future, and not be too optimistic or pessimistic when creating the financial plan. So when we're looking at financial planning, we'll be including a cash flow forecast in that plan. Now, it's relatively easy and straightforward to create cash flow models in the short term. The plan on the left, you can see, is for the next 4 months. So we might include our income, things like student maintenance grant if we're at university. We might also have a part-time job. And then we'd include our expenditure, food, household spending, rent, bus, tube fares, etc. Now, the income minus the expenditure will provide us with the monthly balance. This is sometimes called the net cash flow. You can see here is the balance brought forward. So in this case, in month 1, we have not brought any balance forward. Then, in the month, our monthly balance, which we made in month 1, is 953. We add the balance brought forward to the monthly balance, and that gives us our net balance carried forward. So therefore, ending month 1 with £953. In month 2, our balance brought forward is 953. This is because at the end of month 1, we'd forecasted to have £953 in our account, and then of course a day later at the first day of month 2, we would still have £953. And once again we just follow the same process. Total income minus total expenditure will give us our monthly balance. Our balance brought forward plus our monthly balance will of course give us our net balance carried forward. As we said earlier, it's relatively straightforward to create cash flow models in the short term. However, looking at the net balance carried forward for these 4 months, if we were to extrapolate the trend over the next few months, then it could be that we may go into a deficit, i.e. we'd have a negative net balance carried forward. Therefore, we could plan our finances by potentially putting something into place which would remedy the situation. Something like an overdraft may be applicable in this situation. That said, of course, if we are to get a student maintenance grant in month 5, then we would not enter a deficit. Spreadsheets can make the process of cash flow forecasting and cash flow planning significantly easier. So when we're looking at cash flow planning, as we said, it's more challenging to create cash flow models in the medium and the long term. Individuals may wish to consider something called a what-if scenario to understand the implications of certain decisions and certain factors. Some of these what-if scenarios you may wish to consider in any cash flow forecasts you put together is, what if I lose my job at some point in the future? What if I delay plans to buy my first house by a certain number of years? What if I suffer a serious long-term illness and therefore are unable to work? All of these things may influence your cash flow forecasting and whatever financial decisions you make in the future. Of course, as we mentioned earlier, the reason why we must have a flexible financial plan are because of irregular costs and unexpected events, and therefore we may wish to put a contingency plan in place should any of these negative effects happen. So, what financial products and services are there available in order to help individuals maintain sustainable personal finances? We've actually come across a number of these already. Current accounts are one way that individuals can maintain sustainable personal finances. We looked at this back in Unit 1, Topic 4. I'll leave the link to the video in the description. Borrowing products are another thing that we looked at back in Unit 1, and these are very important to certain people who require them in order to meet their financial needs. That said, when taking a borrowing product on board, it is very important that we know the terms and the conditions of that borrowing product. A third product that might help individuals maintain sustainable personal finances is insurance. We looked at insurance in depth back in Unit 1, Topic 10, and there are a vast range of insurances that anybody can take out in order to protect themselves against unexpected events. The last thing is investments and pensions, which was covered in Topic 2 of Unit 2. Once again, I'll leave the link in the description. Pensions are something that people pay into over the course of their working life so that they can get the money back in the form of monthly payments when they retire. Whilst investments are a method whereby individuals can grow their net worth over their lifetime. There are different types of investments, including stocks and shares, property, and a whole host of other things. Once again, as I said, I'll leave the link in the description if you wish to watch that video. So, now that we've looked at Unit 3, Topic 1, let's test our knowledge. Before we do go through these 3 questions, however, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. The next video in the series is looking at Topic 2 of Unit 3. So the first question, which of the following best describes financial sustainability for individuals? Is it A, achieving and maintaining a balance between personal income and expenditure, B, achieving as high an income as possible, C, satisfying all of an individual's aspirations, or D, satisfying all of an individual's needs and wants. The answer to question 1 is A. Financial sustainability for individuals is best described as achieving and maintaining a balance between personal income and expenditure. Question 2. Financial services providers should support an individual's sustainability by encouraging them to A. Arrange an overdraft, B. Invest in a unit trust, C. Open a notice savings account, D. Or open a savings account. The answer to question 2 is D. Financial services providers should support an individual's sustainability by encouraging them to open a savings account. A is of course not correct because an overdraft will charge any interest on any balances. A unit trust, the value of a unit trust could go up or down. A notice savings account requires individuals to provide notice 30, 60, 90 days, for example, before they're able to withdraw their savings. So therefore, the answer to question 2 is D. And the final question, when drawing up a budget, which of the following is most likely to be categorised as mandatory expenditure? A. Mobile phone contract payments. B. Mortgage instalments. C. National insurance contributions, or D. Personal loan repayments. Before I give you the answer to question 3, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'll also leave a link up here at the top of the video to Unit 3 multiple choice question preparation. So the answer to question 3 is C. National insurance contributions are a mandatory expenditure and are a legal obligation.